Λέγουμε αν θα αποδεχθούμε τη συγκεκριμένη συμφωνία ή θα διεκδικήσουμε άμεσα και με δεδομένη τη λαϊκή ετυμηγορία
The deal he's talking about is actually off the table. So Greeks will be voting in this referendum on the terms of a previous deal offered by creditors like the IMF and Germany. It's being seen as a referendum on whether Greeks should fight to stay in the Eurozone or not. Tsipras urged his people to vote no. He suggested that this would not lead to a Grexit, as it's called. Rather, he said it would allow the government to get a better deal from the creditors. Early in the day, there had been relief on the markets when Tsipras sent a note to European governments, suggesting that he could accept some of their previous terms with alterations. But the mood changed after he launched his scathing attack on the very same creditors, calling them undemocratic and authoritarian. He said that it was shameful they had allowed the closure of the banks. Greece is officially in arrears on a payment of 1.7 billion euros it should have made yesterday to the IMF, and its last bailout deal has expired, meaning that it's on its own until the referendum is done and dusted. The banks have been closed for days with controls on transactions and withdrawals to prevent them running out of cash, as panicked depositors fear they may have to accept a weaker currency rather than euros in future. Well, let's now cross to Brussels, where we're joined by our correspondent Jack Parrock. Jack, firstly, is there some surprise? Are some in Brussels aghast at what happened today?
It's certainly been a very topsy-turvy day, in fact, with the Greek Prime Minister coming forward and saying about some potential new proposals, and then the European creditors saying that they wouldn't accept them, and then his speech, very scathing speech against the creditors. Generally, the feeling is that there's going to be a referendum. The German Chancellor said that it's too late, it's past now, and that the referendum that Alexis Tsipras, the Greek Prime Minister, has called for Sunday on whether the Greek people want to accept the measures put forward by the international creditors, that must now go forward.
So there's no deal on the table. Have you seen any response from the European Central Bank? Because that is the bank that stopped the line of funds to those Greek banks, which Alexis Tsipras says is very shameful.
Indeed. So the European Central Bank is currently holding what's known as its governing council, so the top brass in that institution, on whether they should continue or restart, in fact, their emergency liquidity funding, which has been completely keeping the Greek banks afloat over the last few weeks and months, or whether they should make changes to it. Greece owes 3.5 billion euro to the ECB in about 3 weeks' time, and a default on that payment, like the default on the IMF payment yesterday, that would actually be more catastrophic, the one in 3 weeks' time. That would probably force Greece out of the euro almost immediately. So what the ECB chooses to do, we're all waiting to see now, but that's going to be a major focus point. And clearly, with Tsipras having been so critical of them in his speech, it's going to be all eyes are on it. Who knows what they're going to say?
Well, Alexis Tsipras thinks that Greece has a lot of bargaining power. He said to the Greek people today, if you vote no, that will simply help the government to get a better deal. Do you think he is perhaps naive to think that the likes of Germany, after what has gone down, will fight to keep Greece in the Eurozone? Or is there a sense that Greece must be kept in the zone at all costs?
I certainly think that we're at a point now where keeping Greece in the Eurozone at all costs is not a valid option. There are many who, in the German finance ministry, for instance, who are said to want Greece out, that they've had enough, and that actually what the Greeks are holding back the single currency euro project. Having said that, a Greek exit would be incredibly difficult for the Eurozone, considering that countries like Italy, like Portugal, like Spain are still in very difficult financial situations themselves in bailout programs, or recently having exited bailout programs. And if Greece were to exit themselves, it would open the door for future exits, something that's never happened before. The project of the single currency euro was one that was meant to stay together forever. So if one country were to leave, questions would be raised over other countries leaving were they to hit similar times.
Thank you very much, SABC correspondent Jack Parrock from Brussels.